Hi, Brooke. Welcome to the show.
Hello, so glad to be here.
I am so excited that you are here. I have been looking forward to this conversation for weeks. I found your podcast randomly. I'll be honest, I can't even remember how I found it. And I started listening to it, and I immediately knew that you had to be on my show, that you had just such great messages that my audience would love. So I'm really excited to dive into all of this. I always ask my guests the same question every time, which is, what do you do and how did you come to do what you do?
Yes, well, I am so grateful to be here and always as a podcast host, love hearing that people randomly found your podcast. That is like music to my ears. But my name is Brooke Jean, as you mentioned. My brand is Brooke Jean Unperfected. And I have a therapy and coaching and consulting business that helps mamas let go of who they think they're supposed to be in order to find freedom through a life unperfected. And not just mamas, I actually have a team, and we start the unperfecting process with younger girls too. So we now see adolescents and girls in college and boys too. So we will see them, but we basically get to guide people home to who they are and through a process of kind of embracing their unique messy and shedding shoulds and claiming space and all of those good things. So we're a counseling practice, we're a coaching business, and then I also have the podcast, The Unperfected Pod. And how I came to do that, oh gosh, girl, that is a journey.
I would
Okay.
imagine that it was, yes.
That's a freaking, are we really ready to go there? So I'll try not to let it be the whole 45-minute conversation.
Okay.
But I became a young mom unexpectedly in college, my senior year in college. And that really prompted me. I learned in the pregnancy that I was going to be a single mom, that it wasn't going to work with the dad, and we were going to co-parent. And so there was some real pressure for me to get a steady job, a good career that was going to provide a future for my son and I. So I started, when I was 22 years old in the corporate world with Target Corporation, and I climbed the corporate ladder as a mom for 10 years. And I did a lot of different things, HR positions, group leadership training and development positions, and was running stores. And 10 years into that career where I was just climbing and trying to be the perfect leader and trying to be the perfect mom. Like I remember working 50 hours a week and just hustling, because now I know I was hiding my trauma behind my achievements, as many perfectionists do. Um, I was at the same time, when I wasn't at work, trying to behave like the perfect stay-at-home mom. So I was spending my one day off in my son's classroom and didn't miss the practices or the band meets or any of that. And I was really burning the candle at both ends for 10 years and thought I was doing all the things I was supposed to do, right? I had the career, I met my husband at Target. We had the kid, we had the house, we had the vacations, we had the big bonuses. And it wasn't until a major community collective trauma and crisis, which was the Aurora Theater shooting that happened in 2012. My store was across the street from that theater, and my early morning logistics team, most of them were in the theater that night. And I got a call at 4 in the morning, or 3 in the morning rather, that said, Brooke, you need to get down here. There's been a mass shooting. And half our team is unaccounted for. And it was what transpired in that trauma and what happened for me individually in response to that trauma that got me off the path I was on, which I'm really grateful for because it taught me so much, but it was not the right path for me, onto the path that I'm on now. So we were rebuilding as a community, we were rebuilding as a team. It became clear to me that I wanted to help on a much deeper level than what I could do just as people's boss in a store. And then, 7 or 8 months later, I went and got married to my now partner. And we sat on a beach in Maui for 10 days, where for the first time in over a decade, probably 2 decades, to be honest, my nervous system finally regulated. And it was then that my childhood trauma memories started coming forward. And I knew there was no way that I was going to keep doing all the right things, quote unquote, and heal and get right with myself at the same time. And so I made kind of the bold move to step away from my very steady and stable corporate career to, unperfect and get right with who I was. I did 6 months of yoga and 6 months of therapy and just shed the corporate skin and tried to remember who I was under who the world told me I was supposed to be. I mean, because I was just freaking lost at this point. I went from college to mom to corporate leader, and like I didn't know who I was under any of that. And so I decided to go back to school and get my master's in counseling psychology. And 2 days after graduation, I launched my business. And that was this December will be 8 years ago, and have been doing counseling and coaching and consulting and training and workshops and retreats ever since. And a few years, well, gosh, I guess it's been 6 now. The time flies when you're parenting. I had my second kiddo, my daughter, and I got really bad postpartum depression and anxiety. And I began to notice this pattern of this ever increasing expectation of the modern mom. Like, we're now working and we're now the breadwinners and we're still raising the children and we're still in the classrooms and we're still baking the homemade cookies for the party and we're still getting them to their curriculars and we're still supposed to be involved in our community while we're a size 2 and, a shaved mustache and all this shit. And it's like, there's this like, we've never gotten anything off of our plate. We've just added it on. And that has paralleled a rise in our mental health conditions. And that's where my brand, it used to be Brooke Jean Counseling and Coaching, has evolved into the Brooke Jean Unperfected, because I've become really passionate about mommy's mental health and about us getting some things off our plate and getting clear on what really matters and letting those things guide us forward. So that is the long and short of what I do and how I came to do it.
That is fascinating. And I resonate with so much of what you're saying. And particularly that piece at the end where you're like, we've only added to our plate and never taken anything off. This is something that I talk about a lot with women in my, close circles. It's like, why is that? Why have we decided that we can do it all, or that we need to do it all? Here's the other question. Why do we need to do it all? And what does that say about us, that we don't set boundaries and say, these are my clear boundaries and you have to respect them. And I'm not going to be able to be everything to everyone. So what do you think that is? Why do you think women do that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I could talk about this for days. It's conditioning. So we're taught from a young age, 0 to 7 is when we're the most impressionable from a psychological standpoint. We're taught what a good girl does, and she's of service, and she's takes care of others, and she's kind, and she's sweet, and she looks a certain way, and she presents a certain way. And then we looked at what our mothers and our grandmothers were doing, and they were cooking and cleaning and tending to dad, and dad was working. Not in every family, these are generalizations here, but we got these images. So when you're growing up and you're seeing, whether it is in your own family system, but it's also on the media and in every advertisement, what a good girl looks like and acts like, what a good wife looks like and acts like, what a good mom, these become core beliefs about what it means to be good enough. And those core beliefs drive how we perceive and behave in the world. And so if I were to ask our audience, like, in your mind, what makes a good mom? You're going to say she does all these things because that's what I see on TV. That's what I saw my mother do, or that's what the pressure is. Yeah. And I think we just truly also like want to be of service kind of naturally to the people that we love. And we haven't had the tools or the support or the practice to set boundaries. And so we've just continued to say yes and yes and yes and yes until we burn out. And then we get into therapy and go, shit, I need some boundaries. But that's why, it's because of conditioning. And this conditioning has taught us what a good girl looks like. And that has become core beliefs. And we're just like responding to our environments and abandoning ourselves unintentionally along the way until it's too late. And I also think social media is just such a mind F, because you're seeing on social media everyone else doing it and doing it well. Their Thanksgiving photos looked epic and their spreads looked amazing and they're creating the bento box lunches and posting it and their sensory games and all this shit and they look happy and they've got a cute outfit. And so if you're like me and you're crying at 3 a.m. nursing your child going, why did I even do this again?
Yeah.
You're seeing that and you're going, the problem isn't society, the problem's me.
Yes.
And we tend
Yes.
to self-blame and self-shame. And then we don't have enough safe spaces to talk about that without feeling the fear of judgment of being a bad mom. And this is
Mhm.
how society kind of perpetuates those conditioned narratives. And so
Yeah.
I think it's really magical and beautiful that, you know, people like you and me are having conversations like that or like this to normalize
Mhm.
the not so pretty parts, the unperfected parts, because all of us have them. We're just not blasting that in our blogs and on social media. But
Yeah.
that's why. That's
Yeah.
why. And it takes us like getting cancer or burning out or getting divorced or losing our career to wake up and go, wow, I can't function this way anymore. Why am
Yeah.
I doing these things? But we don't sometimes realize we're doing it until we hit that kind of crisis moment.
Yeah. And I all of that makes so much sense to me. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show was when I was listening to your podcast, I'm like, that girl is so real. Like she is just so real. Like she's putting it out there, the good, the bad, everything in between, all the ugly stuff. She's not afraid to say it
Mm-mm,
out loud. And
mm-mm.
I love that. And that's the type of person that I am. And I would so much rather someone be just brutally honest with me than to try to polish something over to make it seem better. And that's what I felt like a lot of parenting has been in my experience, is parents are kind of like polishing the ugly shit and making it shiny.
Yeah,
And
totally.
instead of being like, actually, this
Totally.
is just a steaming pile of shit. Like, that's what it is.
Totally.
And
Totally.
it's okay. It's okay. It's a steaming pile of shit because we're all in it together.
Mhm.
And I do very much believe in the power of positivity and being grateful and looking towards, things that you are grateful for and all of that.
Absolutely.
However, that can be taken too far, to the point where we're just now being flat out dishonest with how we're
Mhm.
feeling.
Yeah, we're
And
flat out repressing our experiences. And so I like to talk about doing the dance with that, where we face the hard and we name it, like the pile of shit. We don't make it any prettier. We acknowledge that we're in it. We acknowledge that we have a response to that and feelings about it and a struggle, and we work through it. And then we dance over to being conscious about what we choose to give our attention to and being
mhm,
intentional with what I call the precious jewels, which is time, energy, and sanity. And
yeah,
being like, not everybody's going to get my time, energy, and sanity. And then also going back into like, I'm having a depressed day or an anxious day or an overwhelmed day. And so I'm going to face the hard thing. I'm not going to toxic positivity, spiritual bypass my way through it, but I'm
mhm,
also not going to allow myself to get stuck there, because from a biochemical standpoint, you can get really sick if you stay in the yuck. You have to like look for the good and the enoughness in the little moments, because those positive thoughts release positive feeling hormones, which affect our mind, body, and spirit. But you can't have one without the other. We dance almost like a circle 8 in between the two. But when we can, I'm a therapist. So when you hear a therapist say things like parenting is hard and marriage is the hardest thing I've ever done, or I struggle with depression, a lot of people are like, whoa. And a lot of people are like, well, thank God she's showing that she's human. Because if a
mhm,
therapist can struggle and still be really impactful in her work and in her family, then I'm not a lost cause that I'm
yeah,
struggling with these things. I can have mental health issues and still live a beautiful and impactful life. And so that
yeah,
is my hope in sharing the real and the raw and the honest, is A, to normalize the normal, which removes the shame, give people hope that we don't have
mhm,
to be this perfect idea of a good girl to be successful in this world, and also to make people laugh, because laughter is healing. And like, this shit is hard, okay?
yeah,
Like the gig is up. It is my pile of poo and I want it. And I'm so like, being a mom is truly like broken me down to the core and rebuilt me in such a magnificent way. And it's my kids are like my favorite, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And there are some days that I just like fantasize about running away from all of it. And that's normal.
Yes,
We need to
yes.
name that. Like every mom I know, I've worked with thousands of moms at this point. Every mom at one point has fantasized about like murdering their partner in the middle of the night or running away and starting over and changing their identity in Cabo.
Yeah.
Like, let's normalize that. It doesn't make you a
Yes.
bad wife or a bad mom, and it doesn't mean you don't love your humans. But like,
Yes.
when we can say it, then we can work through it. And then we can get
Yes.
back to focusing on the good. So I think both are really important.
I do too. I do too. And we talk a lot on the show about holding two emotions at once. So, you can hold the like, I'm really anxious, I'm really depressed, I'm really angry, whatever. At the same exact moment, you can be really grateful for something. And that's
Yes.
okay. That's okay.
Yes.
Having both of those emotions at the same time is normal, okay, and healthy to
That's
do.
human.
Yeah,
That's human. But as girls, we're taught to only have a couple emotions, which is gratitude, appreciation, you know, happiness, joy. Like, think about how much stigma is around an angry woman. Just
Yeah.
like same with boys are conditioned too. Like boys don't cry. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're taught that we're only supposed to have a couple emotions. So when we have these emotions that are like deep loneliness that comes with being a mother,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
deep fears that come with being a mother,
Yeah.
rejection, abandonment, all these things that are so real. Where is it popular and okay and socially acceptable to show up with those feelings as a woman
Yeah.
without being labeled like a mental health case or a raging bitch or whatever? And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, we need to continue to normalize like gender doesn't matter. As a human being, we were designed to feel a wide range of emotions.
Yeah.
And it's learning to work with them and through them and move them through your body and learn to um listen to what their message is. That's the
Yeah.
task.
Yeah.
But boy, is that uncomfortable transitioning from the good girl mentality and the emotions that are allowed with that to a fully expressed woman in the world. It's easier
Yeah.
said than done, which is
It
why
really
they need
is.
tools like we're sharing on this podcast to help them navigate that transition to authenticity.
Yeah. And I think the more that you get grounded in yourself, the more you know yourself, you come to truly know yourself and know your wants and your needs, the easier it is to start expressing those out in the world. But I think we've been conditioned for so long that once we decide maybe that's what we want, we don't even know how to begin doing that. Now, how do you begin teaching your clients to protect those three things that you said: time, attention, and sanity? Right? Those are the three things.
Time, energy, and
Oh, energy,
sanity.
time, energy,
Time,
and sanity.
energy.
So, like, that's essentially, boundary setting. So, how do you even
Mhm.
begin to teach your clients how to disentangle themselves from the, so many obligations that we have put on our plate that we now need to either completely drop, hand off to somebody else, ask for help. These are hard things for people to do, especially women to do. So, how do you begin that process?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with exactly what you just said, which is presence, getting
Mhm.
still. When I ask women, like I have exercises I'll work you through to claim back 2 to 3 hours in your day. But then when I say, what do you want to do with it? They look at me like a deer in the headlights, like, I don't fucking
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
You're asking me what I want to do. And then they start telling me they want to grocery shop and shit. And I'm like, listen,
No, you don't.
a queen does like a Whole Foods solo trip, but if I could do anything, that is not it, boo boops.
Right.
So the first thing we need to do is to create the spaciousness, the presence for them to sit and like rebuild the trust with themselves, mind, body, and spirit. That I'm going to ask you some questions like how you feel about things and what you want in this world. And I'm actually going to start listening. Because another issue that we have is as young girls, we start becoming at war with our own bodies because they're not perfect or because
Mhm.
they're experiencing abuse of some kind or whatever. So we start to shut those channels off of the body signals and the body wisdom. So a lot of times women need help in just rebuilding that trust and opening up the channels of communication. And we need mindfulness, meditation, being out in nature, play, moving our bodies, breath work, yoga. Those are all some really beautiful grounding practices that we need to be like allow them to actually become practices to then get the data of what we want to do. And then from like a more tangible, once we have some of those going and we're starting to heal that relationship, mind, body, and spirit and intuition, then I have moms like brain dump. What is all the shit you're doing right now? And it's insane, the lists that come forward. They're like, really? You want me to write it? Yeah, we could take 3 sessions on this if we need to. They write it all out. And I got this from Marie Forleo. I went through her program called Becoming a Time Genius. And it's called the Plato's Principle, which is the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of our results come from 20% of our efforts. So I have them brain dump everything out that they do, which is therapeutic in and of itself. It's validating. It's like, oh yeah, a queen is overwhelmed. Look at how much we're doing.
Right.
And then I have her highlight the 20% of the things that actually move her toward who she wants to be and how she wants to feel and what she wants in her life. And those things are determined in the grounding print, like the yoga and all of that is where she comes up with that. And I have them get really clear on the 20%. And the things that we're doing, whether it is the grocery shopping, the food planning, the carpooling, the exercise that we're no longer excited about, like the things at work that aren't really moving the needle forward, we get really clear, like I'm doing these things, but they're not actually lighting me up or kicking the ball down the field. And then we start to look at like, what does your week look like? And if I were to just look at your calendar, can I see what your goals and your values are and what matters most to you in your life? And then we look at things like, when do you have your best energy and how do you protect that space for the things that matter most? Like you and I were talking about how important your movement practice is to you. Well, I want to see that that is like loud and clear on your calendar, or if quality time with your kids is, or if networking for your business is. It doesn't matter what it is. That's the thing too, is like you get to decide what matters most to you in your life and your family. It doesn't have to all be nutrition and movement and family time. It can be travel and reading and intimacy with your partner. Like there is no right or wrong here. That's where the shedding of the shoulds is part of this process too, of like redefining for you what matters. And then looking at, where can I outsource these things? Is your partner showing up? Like, I love the book Fair Play. We are not dividing the mental load. I am in my family, but it took me years of getting there. And I'm lucky and privileged to have a partner that's supportive in that way. But there's a lot of moms out there that don't have that support system. So really helping them get some strategies of, who is my support system? How do I hire one if I need to? How do I budget for one if I need to? And how do I outsource some of this shit without guilt? Because if I would rather be playing with my kids than cooking a meal, that's okay. If I would rather be in my kids' classroom than doing all this admin stuff for my business, that's okay. But who can help us? And then coaching them on how to have those like how to make the ask in a way that's not aggressive or highly conflictual, how to make the ask, how to set the boundary. And then the hardest part is how to maintain it. Because as moms, we're great planners, honey. We can multitask till the cows come home. I can do this exercise and I can plot out my week. And then when my husband says, I'm really tired tonight, suddenly that 4:30 yoga class, without even a thought, goes off the calendar because he said he's tired. That is how powerful the conditioning is. So it's the protection and like the building of those boundaries that can be really hard. But it takes practice.
I see it over and over and over in women that they just always put themselves last on the list. They're always last on the list. And then they're upset about it. They're not okay with it. They are frustrated. They are resentful. They are angry. They have very strong negative feelings about the fact that they have consistently put themselves last on the list. But then every opportunity that shows up for them to put themselves higher on the list, they don't take. And
Totally.
It is, from my vantage point, so frustrating because I want them to take it. I want them to take it. I want them to put themselves higher on the list. I want them to, feel lit up from the inside and passionate about something and excited about something, because I know it's the best thing that they can do for their kids. It's the best thing they can do for themselves, but it's also the best thing that they can do for their kids. But it takes time. It takes time, like you're saying, to undo that conditioning. And I think there's also, at least for me, and I think this is probably because mom guilt is it's a real thing, mom guilt.
Yep.
How much do we need to be there for our kids to feel loved, right?
Mm.
So I have never wanted to be a room parent. That is not my jam at all. It is horrible to me. All of these children, it's so loud, it's messy, it's unorganized. Like the whole thing is like, blah, right? And my
Preach,
kids,
preach, girl, preach.
horrible. And my kids have asked me many, many times to be a room parent. And I have very nicely declined over and over. But
Yeah.
that, because I know it is not good for me.
Mm-hmm.
However, that doesn't come without guilt, because
Mm.
then I feel like they really want me to be there and I'm letting them down. And then they feel maybe whatever, like so-and-so's mom's there and my mom's not there. So there's this guilt that's attached with setting boundaries. Even if you set the boundary and you know it's the right boundary, you feel the right boundary for yourself, you feel like maybe it's doing some sort of permanent damage or trauma to your child. So as a therapist, what would you
Yes.
say to a mom who's feeling those feelings?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's normalize them. That mom guilt is real. And our kids are just looking around at what everyone else is doing in their bubble. So they're seeing other moms come in and they want their mom to come in, and they're not psychologically and intellectually ready yet to understand that those aren't the things that mommy shines at. Mommy is teaching you some other really beautiful and valuable lessons by taking you on adventures, or being an entrepreneur, or, being a helping professional, or, being committed to my body and my nutrition. Like there's other things I'm doing that are really well, but from like a more therapeutic, or like a therapist take on it from an attachment standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
which really we're all trying to raise children who have what is called a secure attachment. Okay. So there's attachment styles. We all have attachment styles, which then influence how we relate to others in the world. And so some of the more recent research is indicating that we only have to get it right 50% of the time, 50% of the time, for our kids to be healthily and securely attached. And so that looks like when they're crying, we tend to them. When they're hungry, we feed them. We're emotionally present for them. We don't rage at them when they're, whatever, just literally half the time. And when I tell moms that, it's like, can we melt this pressure away? Because I know that I felt like there was like 2 times when my daughter was young and I was in that full-blown depression and anxiety that I like yelled like a psycho, just screamed. And I had so much guilt and shame around that. And I'm just like, what did that do to my daughter and her nervous system? And then I started reading about attachment, was like, okay, well, 99.5% of the time I tend to her needs and I'm emotionally present and available. And so that little bit is not doing this traumatic damage that we think that we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's also okay, like, for us to continue to tell our kids what's going on and to teach them to be resilient individuals. So they want mommy in the classroom. Okay, tell me why you want mommy in the classroom. Oh, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. Well, here's the thing. That is a real struggle for mom. That is not my joy. I have a hard time in those environments. I even get a little overwhelmed, overstimulated. And so that's not going to be the thing that mommy's involved in. But you know what I love to do with you? I love to go on hikes on Sundays with you. I love to play games on Friday night. And those are the places mommy can really shine. And I understand you have some disappointment about that. And again, it's like holding all of those. Sometimes we just like want to protect our kids so much that we miss an opportunity to like teach them how to be human and how to have needs and how to be okay in disappointment. Like it's okay for our kids to have some disappointment. We don't want to shame it or shun it or ignore it, but it doesn't also mean that you now need to be the homeroom mom either.
Right.
And I just think it's like everything in parenting. It's a slow build, and there's nothing instant or gratifying about it. But later in life, they will be able to say, my mom was really passionate about helping people in the world. My mom was really passionate about nature. And I love those things about her. And I got those from her. But if we spread ourselves so thin trying to be the homeroom mom and the volunteer and all the things, we're not going to be present on those hikes. We're not going to be present in the service in the world. And then our kids don't really know what our stamp on the world is.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having the guilt that you're not a stamp for everything, which basically means nothing,
Yeah.
feel proud of yourself that you are putting a stamp on a couple of things and let those be the guiding principles in your family and what you choose to spend your time, energy, and sanity on. But it is okay that you, like, for me, I always said, like, I cannot sit on the floor and like play with my children like my husband can. Like, it is so boring, so triggering, so annoying.
Yes.
I don't want to pretend I'm a lamb and you're the mommy lamb and we're walking around collecting lambs. Like, my husband will do this for 8 hours with my daughter. And I'm like, how does he do that? But guess what? I am the mom that will take you literally skiing and get you set up and ski with you and coach you through your bravery on that. Like, I
Right.
will take you on adventures and I will coach you through to those adventures. And I will also make you laugh and we will sing and dance and be really silly in our house. But do I
Mhm.
want to sit on the floor and play with my children? Yo, no. And that doesn't make me a bad mom, by the way. It makes me human.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I was the same. I was like, oh God, please, please. I'll play any sport with you. We can go on bike rides. We
Parks,
can parks,
parks,
hikes. You want to go to a
even board
museum?
games. If there's some
I
structure, I'll do a board. I'll play some cards. But if I have to make some shit up as I go, no, thank you, ma'am.
no,
No,
no, no,
no,
no.
this is
And I am
torture.
not making slime. I'm not doing it.
I'm no, oh no, nothing. Sand, slime,
Yeah.
putty, all of it. I mean, painting is as far as I'll go, and I have to really breathe and be intentional through that process. But
Right.
yeah, it's like, why do we feel like we have to be doing all these like arts and crafts and these specific things to make healthy and whole children? What our children really need is a safe space where they feel unconditionally loved and where they can be a mess and still be held. Like, that's what our kids need. They don't need all the extra bells and whistles. Anything beyond that is a bonus. They need us to be healthy and present, and only, 50% of the time,
Yeah.
PS.
Yeah.
So I hope
I-
that that helps us, like, just take the pressure off a little bit of having to be all the things all the time, because we become so frazzled
yeah.
that we're
And
not enjoying any of it.
I feel that so deeply because that has really always been my belief. I mean, and I grew up in a household. My parents were fantastic, but they were an average working class family. They worked their butts off
Mhm,
to, have a nice home and live in a good school district and send us to
mhm,
college and all these things. So there wasn't a lot of time with them because they had to work a lot. When
mhm,
they were home, they were loving, they were supportive, they
mhm,
were, they were good parents. And I was securely attached to them. So I feel as an adult, when I entered into parenthood, that was kind of my view on things. Like, I don't really have to do that much. I have to love them. I have to love them and take care of them. And that's it. But
yep,
then culture seeps in and you start looking around and comparing yourself to other parents and seeing all that they're doing and feeling like, oh, do I need to do that too? Like, is my kid going to feel less than or unimportant
mhm,
because I don't do these things? And then, as they get older and older, my children are not sports kids. They don't
mhm,
enjoy playing sports. They don't want to play sports. Well, I happen to live in an area that is very sports dominant. It's most kids play multiple sports a year, sometimes multiple sports in a season.
wow,
And
yeah,
so parents are always running, they're on travel teams, they're running hither and yon to all these different games and, tournaments and all this stuff. And like, I mean, sometimes it's out of the state and like all kinds of stuff. And it starts young. I mean, 6, 7, they start doing this, 6, 7 years old.
yeah,
And I definitely went through a phase where I thought, should I be making my kids do this?
mhm,
Because is this going to help them get into college or something? I don't know. Like, it was so
mhm.
confusing to me because I was like, why does everyone do this? Now, if you love it and you do it because you love it,
Different
rock on,
story,
sister.
different
Rock
story.
on.
Or
But
your
if
kids
you,
are really leading with it. Like, I really want to play soccer, or
yes,
I really want to be in music. Like, cool.
yes. And
But
my
doing it
daughter
for the sake
danced
of
for a
doing it.
while and
Mhm.
she really wanted it. And she danced, she wound up on dance team and was very involved with it for a period of time. But it was again, child led. She really wanted it. The second she said, I don't want to do this anymore, we dropped it and we didn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, even though I had that stance, I
Mhm.
was still influenced. I can still feel that influence coming from the outside where I start questioning my own judgment. because
Mm,
of what I'm seeing around me,
mm,
you know?
yes. Yeah,
And
because we're just looking outside ourselves for validation and, what we need. And what I want to remind moms of is like, you actually know what your child needs more than anyone else. So you know who they are, you know what their interests are, you know what their threshold is, their learning style, So, like, don't take what I'm saying for it. If your kiddo is like nagging you, mommy, play with me, mommy, play with me, mommy, play with me. If you literally kneel down and you give them 10 to 20 minutes of your undivided attention, they ease and they go do their own thing. Use your like lived experience with your children to learn what they need and what they don't need. But that's the problem, is like, we're looking outside ourselves for the answers of how to be the perfect parent versus trusting our own mama intuition of what our children need. And you, mama, know best. You
mm,
actually know what they need, and they know what they need better than what everyone else is doing. But again, as women, we have not been taught to trust ourselves and our intuition and our mama guts. Those things have been, taboo and shunned upon. And, our most powerful gift is our mama intuition. And where do
mhm,
you learn how to use that and to expand that? But you know who your kids are and what they need. You'll know if they're a 3 sport kind of person or I love to read books and use my imagination, and let them guide you. But being busy for the sake of being busy is an avoidance strategy. And so a lot of families are busy because it's uncomfortable to be home or to be in their own bodies or to be in their marriages or to be in their family dynamics or to be in their generational trauma. And so we really have to like look at the busyness and ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Is this
yeah.
really serving my family, or am I just trying to keep up, or am I running from myself?
Yeah, those are all great questions.
Mhm.
And that mama gut that you talk about, I think that we can only access that when we can access it for ourselves. So it
Mhm.
begins with accessing our own intuition for ourselves. What are my needs? What are my boundaries? What are my hopes and desires? And, what am I passionate about? And when you start being able to access that for yourself, then you can so much more easily access it for your children as well. So
Yes. Yeah. And it comes back to that presence, right? Like, if you want to learn what your intuition has to say, you got to sit in stillness. And sometimes you have to wait a while before it starts speaking to you. But the body knows. It's not in your rational thinking brain. That's only like 10% of our operating system. Your subconscious, your intuition, your spirit, your energy, all that knows. We've just been taught to not trust it, and now we're trying to unlearn that and build these new skills. But when I think about a collective of women who are very attuned to their own needs and the needs of their families and their intuition and their authenticity, what can shift for us on a
yeah,
global level? Like, this is the shit that gives me goosebumps. This is why I do the work that I do. It's
mhm,
big. When
yeah,
one mama chooses to heal and chooses to listen to her gut and chooses
mhm,
to live authentically, there is a ripple of goodness to that is beyond what I think we are realizing. It's
yeah,
powerful, powerful stuff.
it
But it
is.
is, it is, it requires time and energy to build
Yeah.
these skills and to do
I
this
mean,
work.
full body chills when you're saying that, because I also so firmly believe that.
Mhm.
And it is a huge motivation for why I started this podcast. I think women are insanely powerful. We have no idea how powerful we are because we have subverted our power for so long. And
Mhm.
if we choose to look what we do, look what we accomplish when we don't even really want to, right? But it's not,
It's
we're not even lit up
incredible.
by it, right?
It's
It
incredible. What a working mom can do in 4 hours uninterrupted is like more than what her counterpart single dude can do in 10 hours, hands down.
I
I want to
know.
hire the moms. Give me the moms on my team because they
Yes.
will dance circles,
Yes.
circles, and
Circles.
and our natural gifts of like collaboration and connection and attuning,
Yes.
really sitting with
Yes.
people and hearing them and coming up with solutions. Like, we are so gifted, but yeah, it's not like a coinky dink that those strengths have been undermined and we've
Mhm.
been taught to not listen to them because nobody that makes the money in the world wants us making the decisions.
Right. Right.
Like
And
that's on
that
purpose
has to
if you really
change.
start to pay attention. And I believe it is changing. It is each time one of us wakes up and
Yeah.
starts to see, it's powerful.
Yeah. I believe it's changing too, but I think we have a lot more women, I think, that are stepping into their power and going for what they want, but they're still not shedding the shoulds, as you
Mhm.
say, and putting things down. Like, I think we have a lot more work on teaching women how to not just go for these things that they're passionate about and drag all that other stuff along with them, but to drop that
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
you're so
Yeah.
right.
Put the backpack
Clear.
down.
That's
Yeah.
such a clear observation. Now we're trying to become enlightened while still doing all the modern mom day stuff.
Yes. 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 No, no, honey.
No,
No
guys,
is a,
we
was
are
it Oprah
not.
used to say, no is a full sentence. No is a
Yeah,
complete
no is a
full
full
sentence.
sentence. And
Yeah.
like, we are not an unlimited tank of gas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are not.
Absolutely.
We have to like live intentionally. We have to plug in. We have to power up. We
Yeah.
cannot just keep adding more and more and more and then shame ourselves because we're numbing out at night or lashing out at night or whatever self-sabotaging coping mechanism you found yourself in just trying to keep up. And then you
Yeah.
shame yourself and then you double down on the perfectionism and trying to do it all. The
Yeah.
cycle is, the gig is up. We're
Yeah.
jumping off the hamster wheel. We're no longer trying to do it all. We're just trying to live consciously and in alignment with a few things that really light us up. And we're trying to take care of ourselves so we can better take care of the people that we love. Period. We're not keeping up with all the other things anymore. It's not serving us. It's making us sick.
Yeah, it is. And when you start doing it, it feels amazing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
actually physically in your body, it
Yes.
feels amazing.
Yes.
And that's
Liberating.
so liberating.
Like
You
no is
literally,
just like no without an explanation is like you could
yes.
have like an orgasm over it. You're like, it's just a fucking no.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't even feel like I need to explain. I don't need to
No,
lie. I don't need to explain. It's just a
no
no.
excuses,
And
no
all
nothing.
my mom community, like, we don't even question. We're just like, we
Yes.
get it. Like, we're going to put something on the calendar. It's 50-50 if that shit's going to come to fruition or not,
Right.
honestly, because of life.
Life,
But when
yeah.
you start to say no without the like guilt and the excuses, it is like addictive in its own way because it's so liberating.
It
And you
is.
also realize like the world keeps turning. You don't lose all of your friends and you don't
Yes.
lose your position in the world and you don't lose your position at
Yes.
work. In fact, no one even freaking notices. And then you go into this
Yes.
like, well, why did I think I was so important? Like, this is the
Right.
layers. This is the layers of the psyche that we have to work through as
Yes.
women. It's
Yes.
unbelievable.
And then the mind, the ego, whatever it is, can play a really nasty trick on you, because when you do stop doing it and then the world doesn't fall apart and no one noticed, then you're like, well, aren't I valuable?
Mhm.
Don't I
Yes.
hold any value?
I must not be that important. And why did I think I was? Am I a narcissist? Like, no,
I
dude.
mean, it's
Let
gone
me
so
start
far.
psychoanalyzing this new slew of problems I must have because
Yes.
but see this is our we have been conditioned to internalize the problems in the world. It's
Mm-hmm.
our fault. It's something we're doing wrong. We can't figure this out. And that has to stop because it's not true.
Yeah.
It's
So not
it's the
true.
systems that have us believing we should be able to do it all and do it all with gratitude that are perpetuating this. None of us are doing it all with gratitude. We're
Yeah.
just not sharing that on social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
We're all struggling with something right now.
And we're not sharing how hard motherhood is, because it
Mm-hmm.
is so hard. It is
Yes.
so hard. And that does not diminish how much you love your children
Not
to
even.
say that it is fucking hard. Like,
Totally.
and
Totally.
we
Hardest
just
thing.
hard, day in, day out, hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we need to come together as a group of women and just be honest about that and
And lower the bar. Like there's a
lower
part I'm
the
writing a
bar.
book. It's
Yes.
like I have a whole chapter on lower. Can we just collectively decide right here, right now, to take a deep breath and exhale and lower the bar because we're all operating 10 out of 10. If we were to operate 8 out of 10, it would still be perceived as 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We can lower the bar. Your mediocre is still fabulous, honey. I can promise you that. Because when I lower the bar again, no one even notices. And I'm like, why was I trying so hard at life all those years, bro?
Why was I killing myself?
Nobody was even noticing on the positive end and on the,
Yeah.
but I think we have to do it together, and we have to start cheering each other on for that effort and that vulnerability. And we have to stop comparing ourselves, and we have to stop shaming each other, because there is still an element of that. There's still some mom shaming and mom judgment that goes on in the world. It's like, we have to also look at where we're perpetuating this, whether it is not setting our boundaries and not tapping into courage and not making ourselves a priority, and also judging other mothers, because sometimes we do it unconsciously because we're actually judging ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's not to call people out, but it is to take ownership of our part of the problem, because there's a part of that exists still in the world. And so look at the moms that you're secretly judging, and then look at, where are you judging that inside yourself? And if we can learn to let that judgment of self go, then we can learn to let the judgment of others go. And then it's easier for us to like name the hard and normalize the normal and lower the freaking bar. The bar has to be lowered. Like, where else can we go from here? What more can we be doing? This is out of control.
Yeah,
literally.
It is. It's completely out of control. It's completely out of
like,
control.
What more can we add to it? Now we're adding like AI. I need to figure out AI. I'm like, I can't figure that out right now. Like, now we're adding like, everyone's like talking about schooling and what's the right schooling. And I'm just like, listen, I need to coast for a couple of years. And and again, if it's what you're passionate as a mother, if you're passionate about those things, I applaud you and I support you. If you love making the sensory games and the bento box lunches, listen, I cheer for you, but do not judge me that that's not my game.
Yeah.
Because I am the best life coach for my children. Okay. And I get better as they get older.
Yeah. Oh my God. No, that's fantastic. I love that. And we talk a lot about mindfulness on this show, and I'm always giving different mindfulness techniques, but I'm always saying, like, this is a suggestion. This is an opportunity to experience something new. It does not mean that it's right for you. And if it's not right for you, don't try to shove the square peg into the round hole. Like,
totally.
Don't do it. If it doesn't work for you, you leave it, you let it go, you bless it and say goodbye, and you move on to the next thing. And maybe your version of mindfulness doesn't look anything like the spiritual community out there. Maybe it's not meditation. My husband, there's no way that man's going to sit down and meditate, but he can sit down and build Legos for hours.
Yep. And that is meditative. Yeah, because you're in the present, you're focused.
Yes. I would smash them with a hammer. Okay. So that would not work for me. But follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. Find those things that make you feel expansive, alive. Yes.
Alive. Relaxed. Can I just feel more alive? Yes.
So I don't want to hold you past our time. I know you're super busy. Just, do you have some practices that do that for you?
Oh my gosh. I am like the biohack queen. Okay.
And
I first want to preface this with exactly what you said. Just because I'm doing it doesn't mean that you should or you have to. Different strokes for different folks. I also like to preface it with, it took me 2 years to build the routine that I have now. But I am a firm believer in how you start your day sets the tone for your day. So in an ideal day, I get up in the morning and I go get my hot lemon water. While it cools off, I do a 10 to 15 minute meditation. And then depending on what came through in the meditation, I either journal or I create. Then I like to get outside and get some indirect sunlight in my eyes to get my circadian rhythm going and just get some fresh air. I might do some gentle stretching. I might do some energy work in terms of energy boundaries if I've been feeling really heavy, because I'm definitely sensitive to energy and an empath. And that's my morning ritual. Okay. But then, honey, you better believe I have like a midday ritual and an evening ritual and just rituals till the cows come home, because this is the only way I can stay sane as a person who has just like a lot of stuff in my body to still work through. So midday ritual is going to look like a walk after lunch. And then after that, probably a 20-minute yoga nidra. So if y'all don't know about yoga nidra, listen to me.
I
This
love
changed
you.
my life. When I was so, I just struggle sleeping in general, but having children and my daughter particularly, who just never has been a good sleeper. That 10 to 20 minute yoga nidra practice where you just lay there and do the damn thing and it's equivalent to like 3 hours of your most restful sleep, it would recharge me for the what I call second shift of motherhood, which is your
Mhm.
afternoon and getting the kids and
Yeah.
taking them and dinner and books and bath and blah, 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 all that
Yep.
stuff.
Yep. Mhm.
And so a walk, and depending on what I need on the walk, I might listen to some binaural or some bilateral music if I need some
Mhm.
regulation. I might listen to a podcast if I need some inspiration. So I'm always listening to my body and asking it, like, what when I'm doing a meditation, what do I need? When I get to choose my own adventure throughout the day because I like that for me. And then that yoga nidra. And then in the evening, it's just known in my family that at 6:30, mom is either going to go take a bath or she's going to go do some yoga and stretch and do some red light therapy and legs up the wall, or she's going to go for a walk if she didn't walk earlier. But there's this time in the evening that everyone just knows, don't mess with me. I'm going upstairs. I'm having some time.
Yeah.
And that's when I'll do kind of like a wind down ritual. And those are the things that truly, I mean, there's little things too, like the power of the mini pause. Like if I have a full caseload of intense things, or I have a big talk or something I'm really anxious about, I do a lot of just like pausing before and maybe putting my hands on the steering wheel and taking 3 deep belly
Mhm.
breaths and just like getting back in my body. Or you can see my doors behind me. Like I'll open the door and I imagine that there's like a waterfall. And as I walk through it, I'm cleansing my energy from one client to the next. So I do lots
Mhm.
of little things like that too throughout the day to literally prime this vessel, honey, because it is not easy being me.
Mhm.
It is not easy being a human. It is not easy being a working mom. So I spend a good chunk of my day pouring into myself to get through the day, but it didn't happen overnight. I've done a lot of things that didn't fill my tank. And a lot of things that did. I still also love to like get out and dance and hang out with other women and go to live music shows. And there's other things I do too, but those are kind of my day to day. I feel like myself and I feel like I can do what I need to do when I do these things. That's
Yeah.
my lineup as
That's
of right
great.
now.
Do you do any other than that, like taking 3 deep belly breaths? Do you do any breath work?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for
Okay.
sure. So
Okay.
the double inhale with the exhale, that's
Hmm.
like, I don't know if you guys know who Andrew Huberman is. He has the Huberman Lab podcast where he's a
Mm-mm.
neuroscientist out of Stanford and he talks a lot about breath. Like he talks a lot about all these mental health things that I love. But he was, telling us the science of the double inhale. So that long inhale through your nose. And then when you can't inhale any further, you take another sip of
Hmm.
inhale and then open mouth exhale longer. So when I'm
Hmm.
actually really kind of worked up, I'll do something like that. I've also been experimenting with it's like 30 breaths and then a pause, 30 breaths and then a pause, 30 breaths and then a hold and then an exhale. I usually get pretty dizzy and like, in a good way on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It feels good. Yeah.
But I would say in general, just a lot of awareness throughout the day of what is the quality of my breath and am I really breathing into my belly and my diaphragm? Because I'm not. And so
Hmm.
that's my main practice is just checking in and
Yeah.
going, wow, I was really holding that in my chest
Yeah.
or in my shoulders. And when I do that, I get back in my body. And I also tend to notice, well, what's my stress level right now? What's my
Hmm.
anxiety level right now? Oh, God, I'm feeling something. I need to do something with that.
Yeah.
So the power of the breath is not only like what the not neurobiological, but what like the biological benefit can be by taking a breath, what the like spiritual and emotional can be when you just like get in the practice of checking in with yourself. Like
Hmm.
you're showing yourself that you matter. You're showing your inner child that you matter. Your brain
Yeah.
is recording that as truth in the here and the now. Energetically, you're showing you matter. And there's a beautiful effect of that. So there's so much goodness that can come from something so simple as throughout the day. It doesn't take me any more time than the time I was taking to do whatever I was doing. I'm
Hmm.
just noticing what is the quality of my breath. And so for busy working moms that have a lot on their plate, you can start there. You don't need to add in anything new, just with what you're doing at the top of every hour, whatever you're doing. Can you notice your breath and can you elongate your inhales and exhales?
Yeah.
Start there and watch your world begin to open up.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have a guide for moms that gives them a bunch of different mindfulness tips. And a lot of them literally don't take any time out of your day. Like when you're washing your hands, wash your hands. Feel the
Yes.
sensation of the water, feel the temperature of the water, feel what the soap feels like in your palms, smell if the soap has a smell, smell the smell of the soap, feel your feet grounded on the floor. You have to wash your hands.
That's
So,
right.
but
That's right.
just be there while you wash your hands, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes. You have to
and
go to the bathroom. So can you take 3 belly breaths while you're peeing? I mean,
right.
TMI, but let's go,
I'm like, let's
honey.
do it. Let's do
You
it.
you you you're going to spend the time. That's called habit stacking, right? You're spending
Yeah.
the time doing these habits. Where can you stack on top of it something that's really healing and nourishing to you? And it's more
And
likely to stick when it's on top of something you already do.
right. And that's the thing. Like it can sound like, oh, now I'm just adding something else I have to do, but it feels good. Doing it
Mhm.
actually feels good. So you want to do it. Once you start doing it, you want to do it
You
because it
crave
doesn't
it.
feel like this other like task that you have to accomplish. It feels like it expands time and opens up consciousness. And so
Yes.
it's a
You crave it.
beautiful
You start to
ways.
crave it. You
You
have to
do.
give it 30
Yeah.
days though, guys. Like starting a meditation practice, not easy, but 30 days in, you're going to crave it. Starting a
Yeah.
yoga practice, it's like anything, like give yourself 30 days and you're going to
Yeah.
start to go, man, I notice the difference when I meditate and I don't for the
Yeah.
rest of
And
my.
be curious and playful because let's say it is meditation that you want to try for 30 days. Well, there's easily 30 different types of meditation. So
Mhm.
you might have to play around and figure out which type of meditation really resonates with you, that you feel like you can stick with, that you feel the most expansive and peaceful and calm and centered and grounded after you finish
Yes.
it. So
Yes.
don't be afraid to play. Don't outsource. We talked about this on another episode, but outsourcing your I guess intuition, but like thinking that somebody else has the answer.
Hmm.
Nobody else has the answer. You have the answer. The answer
That's
is
right.
inside of you. You just
Totally.
have to find it.
That's right.
And finding it requires taking some time to be with yourself in a way that feels good to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes to all of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation. I will put all your stuff in the show notes, your website, your podcast, all that stuff, so people can find you. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to touch on?
I don't think so. I think just I hope that there's something in this conversation that, mamas can put in their back pocket and weave into their world. And it's not about doing all the things that you learned today. It's about choosing one that really resonated with you. But in the bigger picture, it's like truly when we let go of who we think we're supposed to be, we can start to co-create a life that we want to live. And that is my kind of parting wish for everybody that's listening today. And thank you so much for having me and for doing this beautiful work in the world. It's so needed. So thank you.
Thank you. You too. And everybody check out Brooke's podcast. It's so good. It's called say again,
The
Unperfected Pod.
Unperfected Pod. The
The
Unperfected
Unperfected
Pod.
Pod. It automatically downloads on my thing, so I don't even have to know the name of it anymore.
The Unperfected Pod.
The
Yep, we're
Unperfected
keeping it
Pod.
real over
So
there.
good. That's so
Yeah, we're
good.
keeping it real, but giving a
Yeah.
lot of techniques and tools just like you, like really tangible things to help moms, because we're just helping one mom at a time over here or
Yeah.
one human at a time.
Yeah. And often it takes hearing the same thing many times over before we even take an opportunity to try it. So
That's right.
we're just going to keep pounding on this drum.
Pouring,
And
pouring, pouring in until one day you wake up and you go, I'm going
yes,
to try breath work. And you're going to,
yes,
yeah,
yes. And I've seen
that's,
that in my own life. Like just because I
yes.
am where I am right now with my
Mhm.
practices, that I did that one teeny tiny little step at a time. And I had to hear it about 500 times before I tried it for the first time. Like this is a process.
It is
So
a process. So you're right on time. Everybody's
yes,
right on time.
you're right on time. That's right. That's right. All right. Thank
Awesome.
you so much, Brooke.
Good to be here.
Bye-bye.